Alright, I figured I'd walk you through how to start up the F-18 there. So select your bad boy over here, instant action, click on cold and dark, and then that'll set you up in an F-18 parked, cold, ready to start up. So we can and how to take off. It takes off itself if we set it up right. Alright, so first things first. Let's look down here at our right console. I'm gonna right click on the battery switch right there. Look to the left and right click on the APU switch. APU means auxiliary power unit. And once that's ready, we're going to hit this button right here, and it'll light up green when it's ready. Alright, that's ready. Left click the engine crank switch right there, and that'll start warming up the engine. Once that gets to 25% RPM, we're going to uncage the throttle. So that's at 25% RPM right now. We're going to hold right Alt and click home. As you do that, you'll see that moves forward. And then we're going to wait for the RPM to settle at around 60%. But before we do that, we'll hit left Control C. It'll close the canopy and help out with the volume a little bit. Alright, so now we're going to turn on all of our displays. And first, just to get this out of the way, click on the base of the joystick. Alright, so right click that knob to turn on this MFD. Same for over here. Now the HUD is a knob that you turn. That's this fella right here. Left click, scroll up. And the lower AMPCD is going to be this knob right here. It's the same as the HUD. Left click, scroll up. Alright, now we are going to crank the right engine. So we're going to right click on the engine crank switch. Wait for this to get up to 25% RPMs. And then we are going to click, or rather press right shift home. You'll see that uncage the throttle, push that forward so it's up with our other throttle there. And then as that spools up to 60%, change our view here. Alright, so that's up to 60%. And let's take a peek at the screen right here. That's our HSI, that's our navigation. So now that both engines are going, we're going to right click on radar to operable and right click on INS to ground. INS is inertial navigation system. It's how we navigate through space. Click on that button right there to start aligning our INS to a stored heading. As we see down there, let's get ready to start aligning. Take your time. There we go. This will start counting up from 0 to a minute and 30. That's how long it takes to align to a stored heading. While we're looking down here, we're going to turn on our RWR, put our jammer to receive, and then either turn our countermeasure dispenser on or put it to bypass. I like to use it manually, so I put it to bypass. Now, the next thing we're going to do is come over here to the left console. We're going to right click our OBOGs to on, that's onboard oxygen generation system. And then we are going to come up here and do some stuff on the right side of the up front console. So we're going to hit menu once, menu twice, and go to FCS, that's Flight Control System. And we see that we've got some X's here. We want to get rid of those, and we want to get our rudders and stabilizers trimmed out, reset. So to reset the FCS, we hold that button down for 2 seconds. And then to reset our rudder trim, hold down this top button on top of the knob for a couple seconds. So if we look back at our MFD over here, we see all the X's are gone. And so that's ready. Here, let's turn down the gain on our HSI display. We see we still have 8 seconds left for that to align. And while we're waiting on that, we're going to right click on the IR cool to norm. That allows our Sidewinder missiles to that allows our Sidewinder missiles to track. We're going to turn on our HMD, that's helmet mounted display. That gives us a nice display whenever we're not looking towards our HUD. Alright, so down here we see the OK, So the INS is now aligned. We're going to turn our INS switch over here to navigate, and then finally we're going to arm our ejector seat. Now, we take off with full flaps, so you can see this is the flap switch right here. Make sure it's on full. It should generally be on full every time you start. And then if we have fuel, which we don't, let's just assume we had a center fuel tank. And we want to make sure that we're ready to jettison that whenever we start combat or when it gets empty. We click the center station right here if we had that center line fuel tank, and then we'll right click on the outside of this button to turn that to stores. So then as we're flying, we're ready to ditch that fuel tank, we can just hit the jettison button, it'll drop the fuel tank. Alright, so last thing to do, park and brake in. So if everything's done properly, there will be this light right here will no longer say master caution, and at this point we're ready to take off. So we are going to throttle just a very small amount forward. If you've got good speakers or a headset or whatever, you'll be able to hear your engines increase in their RPMs, or you can actually see it down here. I throttle back, it drops. Throttle forward, it increases. Now, your joystick twist axis will by default be used to control your nose wheel steering, and your nose wheel steering is indicated that it's active by this NWS right here on your HUD. Do try not to go too fast while you are taxiing. You will tip over if you're going too fast when you turn. Alright, so I'm going to turn my throttle off here because this is the runway. And I'm going to start using the wheel brakes to slow down. You might have to check the key binding for that, but I think it's by default set to W. But when we get a moment, I can help you guys set up your key bindings to the way I have it set up, so I can teach you as I have it. So we're going to line up with the middle of the runway, and then come to a stop with our wheel brake. Alright, so everything's actually set up to take off, but the first thing we're going to do is actually turn off our nose wheel steering, and that's going to be on your joystick on the top. There are 3 buttons going around the top of that joystick, left, right, and towards you. Press the button that's closest pointing towards you, and that will turn off nose wheel steering. And now that will help us stay in a straight line as we're taking off, but as we start to move faster, as you get up to faster than 50 knots, using the twist axis will engage your rudders back there, and you use that to stay straight while you're taking off. Alright, so engage your wheel brakes, and then throttle forward to max. And then once you start moving forward, release that wheel brake. Alright, so as you roll down the runway, use your rudders to keep you straight, so they'll be the twist axis. And then at about 170 knots, it'll take off on its own. So we got 2 things to do in that we're in there. First, flaps to auto, and then hit the G key to retract your landing gear. After that, you're good to go. You generally don't want to be at 100% RPM for very long. You only need it to take off and climb for a little bit. After you've taken off and gotten some altitude, throttle back. Generally anywhere from 90 to 98 is going to be a good RPM percentage to be at as you're traveling about. It'll dramatically decrease how much fuel you're spending. So you see there, it's, ticking pretty fast, but once we punch that forward and it gets up to 100 RPM and the afterburner kicks on, it goes a lot faster. Anyways, that's the gist of the cold start there. Hopefully this helps.